We're live. Good evening, everybody. Wow, another week already. Flipping heck. Friday night in the cavern. Welcome, everyone. I'm really enjoying these chats. It's been fabulous, and we're not done yet. With some great ones still to come. So we have so tonight, no different. Chatting to a really good chum. For me, stone lifting. I mean, all my expertise or all my knowledge is mainly about the dinnies my whole life. But you know, obviously, since I've got into this, you know, it's I've become more interested in the whole stone lifting thing, and obviously I've met some great guys who are very knowledgeable across the board and the thing. I mean, stone lifting, obviously, back in the day, you didn't have Instagram and Facebook, you know, or you didn't have, you know, sort of social media where you could pass on stories and photographs and videos. You certainly didn't have Google Maps, you know, so stories were passed down through generations, and I kind of love that side of it. I think that's one of the things that attracts us all, is the history of this and how it goes father to son and the stories go down. But inevitably, you know, stories over the years, they do get, you know, I'm not saying distorted, but they change a bit over time. They get embellished, or you lose a bit of a story, you know. So these days, I've noticed, I mean, guys like David Webster, you know, Steve Jack, Peter Martin Sr., you know, Martin Janksics, you know, they've all been sort of writing all these stories down, which is fabulous, because once it's in the book, it's like Bill Crawford and I were talking about a few weeks ago, once it's in the book, it's there forever, and the story's there, it's preserved, you know, which is lovely. So my guest tonight is James Grahame. I first seen James, right about the first time I ran the first gathering. I was kind of looking up old videos and stuff on Facebook, you know, or on YouTube, to try and find people, you know, who had lifted the Dinnie Stones before, because what I wanted to do was create my own website. And just on the theme of, you know, stories accurately being passed down. I mean, all the stories about my dad that I read in the newspaper over the years, I mean, every single one of them had some wee, albeit a small or a major detail, but there's always something wrong. You always read an article and go, oh, I got that wrong again, you know. So I was just looking for guys who had lifted the Dinnie Stones, and I came across James Grahame. And I seen him taking on the Dinnie Stones. And my good friend Peter Martin sadly had died a week before I did my first Dinnie lift, and Peter Martin Jr., Peter Martin the Sixth, and James were good friends, and they had done a lot of tours together. So I came across some of their videos, and I remember seeing him lifting the Glenroy stones and stuff like that, and I was very impressed, you know. And then I got to meet him, and we became good friends pretty much right away, and we take the piss at each other, something shocking. We do. But so I mean, one of his he has obviously prolific writer as well, and he's taken on the work of Peter Martin, which is fabulous, because Peter had done so much. He had got a lot out, but he hadn't finished his work, and it's lovely to see James taking up the reins in that. So obviously James wrote this book. Oh no, it's not out there. I'm sorry, that's not it. No, he wrote this book. Oh no, sorry, that's Martin Janksics' book. It's my wee joke. So this, Donald Dinnie Uncovered, this is James's book. It's great. It's a great read. I've read it quite a few times, and there's some great stuff in it that I was never aware of. So I think rather than bang on about James, I'll I'm going to invite James in now. So he said he's there. So if I do that and invite James, and he can tell you all about it himself. Sorry, James.
Hey, get the technology. Hold on, let me put that there. Does that work?
The book you wrote there. What was it, that one?
all good books, all with more hair than me.
Sorry, I just couldn't resist that. I had to do that. No, how are you, mate? How's things with you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'll just try and find a better place of lighting in the flat. Hold on.
Yeah, I've got a nice drum kit behind me here, and all sorts of stage spooky lights going on and stuff. It's all good crack up here. And we have beer as well.
Oh yeah, that's a bit better. Yeah, how you doing?
You sitting comfortably?
Yeah, not too bad.
Good man yourself. Then we shall begin. There's my dad's in, and Enzo's in. There's been a great bunch of guys following these chats every week. I'm sure you've seen some. We were chatting to Andy last week, and Bill Crawford. We've been chatting to some great people. The Brett, and oh my goodness, the list goes on. Those. So stone lifters. I mean, obviously, I've seen all your stone lifting stuff on that you put up on YouTube, and you know, we've met a few times. I've seen you sort of lifting in the flesh, so to speak. But one of the things that really impresses me about you, and one of the things that I love, is preserving the history of the stones. You know, it's one thing to be a stone lifter, which is great, but I mean, stone lifters need stones to lift. They need to know where they are. You know, they need to know how the whole thing works, the stories, the history, you know, what's the correct way to lift a stone. I mean, goodness, there's very few have done as much as you. You obviously have the likes of David and Peter, Junior and Senior, you know, and Martin, guys like that. But I mean, you're up there with them all, in my opinion, you know, with what you've done. I mean, what got you interested in that side of it? I mean, I know you've always been interested in lifting stones. So what about the writing side of things?
It's probably my personality, in that there's so much myth and and lost information and misinformation repeated, and I'm one of those tedious people who has to just know exactly what the situation was, and I'm guilty of that. So it started from a position of annoyance, where I would do a bit of research on a stone, because back then you had to just try and find them, not even just the directions, but anything really wasn't as easily found. And you'd search online and you get different facts and figures. And kind of from there, I thought, I'll just go that extra yard and find out exactly what the situation is. I'm just one of those sort of library nerds. And I just like to get to the root of something.
You're too big.
So I knew the information was there, but and what was online was just the stuff that was there, first of all, not necessarily the correct stuff. And I've got no authority to say something to say somebody else is wrong, but I certainly got enough gumption to go find out the source material and then put it online. That was the start of it, and part of that was library research and Google. I've got access to the National Library in Scotland, and then I met Peter, obviously. And much of the stuff I was looking for, he had already found, and not just found it once, but had found 3, 4, 5 references to it.
Right.
So there was a nice sort of meeting of minds there. He had lots of information that I wanted, and he was willing to share it.
Oh, that's cool.
And then I met him in a car park in Airdrie.
Really? Yeah. Was this before you went to Australia? Did I take it you and Peter were friends before you moved out to Australia?
Yeah. So I met him when I was. So for those of people who don't know me very well, born and raised in Edinburgh, and then got that wanderlust kind of thing going on, and backpacked through Australia, and then became hooked on the place, and went and lived there for quite some time. But before I went out there, I was into the barbell sports and that type of thing, the strongman and so on. And if you do the strongman or you watch a Highland Games, there's always stones there, and that was the kind of segue into it. And then online, by email, I met up with this stranger called Peter Martin, who said, I'll take you around some of the stones. How do you fancy meeting me in a car park at 6 a.m? I thought, well, this is either going to go one of two ways. You're never going to see me again, or it's going to be a really good trip. So my wife sort of, took a last picture of me, the description, so it'd be good for the police, and drove down to Airdrie and met Peter about 6-ish in the morning. And then he took me around some of the stones that he was aware of, or a subset that he was aware of, and that was it. I was hooked. I just managed I was mainlining this guy who knew so much. Yeah, I mean, his knowledge was amazing. It was, and it's his enthusiasm too. I mean, I remember he actually contacted me because he had got to hear that I was training for the Stones, and he contacted me up by phone. I don't know how he got my number, but he phoned and says, my name's Peter Martin, explained who he was. And about 2 hours later, we thought, well, we better hang up now. I'll speak to you later, But I mean, all of a sudden, he's just one of those guys you can just talk to, and his enthusiasm was so infectious. And that's what actually got me interested in other stones apart from, obviously the Denny's is a lifelong thing for me, but, to see about all the other ones. And so I can understand, through talking to him. I never got to meet him, unfortunately. So sadly, when I got to talk to him loads, so I can see how meeting him and travelling around and actually visiting the stones can become very addictive, The journey to and from the stones is all part of the experience for me. So I know that when people contact me, I think the main first thing they care about is how much does the stone weigh? What's the GPS directions? and you think, I'm strong enough to lift it. And that's where people start. And some
Right.
people stay there, and that's
Yeah.
fine. If that's your stone lifting ambition and journey, then that's all right. But with Peter, you're driving up 2-3 hours in a car, and there's never a quiet moment. He's knocking out all these stories and facts and figures and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's bizarre because... So I went and tried to do some stone research after he passed away, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And he had a unique talent, which I failed to replicate, where he would walk up to strangers and say, I'm looking for a stone in this area. And he wouldn't get arrested or ignored or shunned. Whereas when I walk up to someone and say, excuse me, I'm looking for a stone, they just... Oh. So I don't know how he had that, because some of the stones he found were just through, not exactly knocking on doors, but going to an area they'd researched and speaking to people in the street or nearby and tracking down these individuals.
But Peter was a policeman, so he also had a way with, I mean, unlike you and I mean, we look more like muggers than muggies, if you know what I mean. And the weird thing is, Peter wasn't even a stone lifter. He didn't lift stones. I know his father did, but Peter never, what I mean, from what I can gather, talking to him, he wasn't actually a stone lifter as such, you know, so to have that passion, you know, because we all do it and get the passion from lifting, but I mean, Peter wasn't a lifter, so that's what makes it even more impressive, you know, that he gives so much of his time and energy into this. Yeah.
I think the people who were around him benefited from that, because he enjoyed researching the stones and then finding them, and then he wanted someone to lift it.
Yeah.
So he was very open to all of us meatheads saying, "Oh, there's something we want to lift. Can you find it for us?" And he'd say, "Absolutely. I've got something to lift, and you're just a man. I'll meet you in a car park."
That's brilliant. I mean, was that first tour that you did, the one where you had the blue Superman t-shirt, or was that a later tour? Did you do many tours with him?
Yeah, I went on several with him. The first one was fairly local. So the Superman stuff, I got that from that was a gift from Luke Reynolds in Australia.
Okay,
strongman.
I know, like
a giant human who might not be watching because he's in bed, but he stole my stuff the first competition we were together. He ate all my sandwiches and stole my smelling salts. And that's official. He's a lovely guy. Blocks out the sun. And that was a t-shirt he gave me, and I did a tour with that t-shirt on. No, the first one was with Peter. We actually tried to find some stones that were in the Iron Mind magazine.
Okay.
The lifter, I forget the guy's name, but we're retracing his tour and lifting some stones.
Okay.
And before I met Peter, I'd been up and lifted Dalwhinnie and other things like that by myself.
Okay.
So I'd begun the journey as everyone does. How do you find the stone? How much does it weigh? Am I strong enough? And then I managed to find Peter, and then that was when the education of the history began. Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, what I loved about him, it wasn't just the story. It was the, you know, the how you lifted and all the local customs. So it was more than just going up and picking up a stone. You know, it was what the stone meant to the locals. You know, how you should pick it up. You know, the sort of the respect side of the stone lift as well, which I loved about him. You know,
that's a good part. That's something I struggle with, and he struggled with a bit.
Yeah.
So the people who got the information out first have the strongest message. And Peter's coming along with corrections and nuances 10, 20, 30 years later.
Well, fair enough.
Because that's just the timeline. So the message he had, in addition to just being, these are the stones, this is how they were lifted.
Yeah.
He's saying, well, they're not all manhood stones. So the Dinnie stones aren't manhood stones. That's a replication of a famous feat of strength.
Yes.
Men's stone, well, that's lifted by people trying to get higher positions within a clan.
Okay.
So that's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
North Uist is often lifted as an act of remembrance. So totally different again, different kind of people.
Yeah.
So they have historically lifted stones and not bragged about it in the hope that others would acknowledge their strength in their absence.
Yes.
Which is amazing. You're lifting something, leaving a seed there in the hope that people remember you when you leave the area or something like that, when you pass on.
Yes.
There's many different ways. And that's hard to get across.
Yes.
It's on the internet.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I always said, I remember talking to Peter about that very thing, because guys would have lifted a stone but not talked about it. They would have let their friends talk about their feats of strength, and I kind of get that. But there's part of me, I don't know how you feel about this, but there's part of me thinks that was the culture, that because obviously if people lived in villages, they travelled to the next village, going back a fair time. But if they'd have had Facebook, I wonder, would the times have been different if they'd have had it then? And I know it's completely different than it is now, but with technology, when you're out training, you just stick your phone on a stand, hit go, and then just go and do your thing and then take the best bits, But that's just because we have the technology now to do that. I wonder, would they have, or was it just a completely different mindset, regardless of what technology was or wasn't available back then?
I suppose, to give an example, North Uist.
Yes.
So the stones out there, which are some of the heaviest that we know of in Scotland, they are there and they are available to be lifted, and yet no one knew about them until a few years ago. And even when Peter researched it, it took him a while to get people to speak to him about it.
Yes, I remember him telling me that.
There are people who still maintain I can't say old-fashioned, but a different way of thinking, and they've maintained it. It's not like there's loads of lifters in North Uist putting videos online. There's plenty of strong guys there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and they have access to it. I mean, if they wanted to, they could. So I suppose, that kind of answers that.
But I certainly don't. I don't walk the walk in that regard. I put my videos up, but only the best one. Suck your guts in, get the angle. I put stuff out there. Others wouldn't. But I think maybe it's important. Excuse me. It was important to Peter that the history of the stones was the centre of everything. Because the only reason you lift these stones in particular, as opposed to the ones in your back garden, is the history of them. You wouldn't travel from Northern Ireland to Scotland to lift the stone in my back garden.
Yes.
But you would travel that to go lift the Dinnies. And the reason you'd lift the Dinnies is because of the history. And that was why, to me, the accuracy of the history, or as close as you could get, was important to document. Even if people choose not to believe things or have a different opinion, that for me completed the important part of why you would lift the stone.
Yes, okay, yeah, I understand that. I mean, what I notice about your writing is you're not giving an opinion on it. You're just presenting facts as you found them. Which then, obviously, I read it, I can take one interpretation out of it. Brett might read it and take another one. Jamie might read it and read it a different way. So you're being presented with the facts and allowed to do your own thing. You mentioned about that I wouldn't travel to your house to lift a stone in your back garden. What I would do is I would travel to your house to drink all the beer in your fridge, and then go out your back garden and lift your stones. I have been known to do that. Mark Haydock, Brett Nichol can vouch for that.
I can actually believe you.
Yeah. So that's just a heads up there, that's common. But then vice versa. Anybody comes here, they can drink the beer in my fridge and lift the stones out my backyard too. So first fair, you know what I mean. But there's always beer or whiskey involved. The only thing is, over here the whiskey's got an E, over there it's got no E. Yeah, no, it's fascinating because one of the things I've noticed, particularly over the first few months of lockdown, when we're all trying to find our way. What do you do? We're staying at home. Obviously I'm lucky I can go out to the gym and train in my garage, have my stones and my weights and stuff, and not everybody had that. And there's people have been putting out training videos and different things just for something to watch. But what I loved was you were taking a lot of the stuff that you would probably want to keep precious and put in your book, but you were sharing all that information. And that to me, I was actually really impressed with that, because it was great because it was interesting. It was something to look forward to every day, a new story. But I thought it was generous too that you would share that, without actually waiting. I'll put this to book and you go and buy my book and then you read about it. Which I thought was it's not very often I'm impressed by you, but that impressed
me. The book came from, it was fairly random.
Yeah.
I would be living in Australia for a while, and I'd met, Luke Reynolds, another guy called Craig Reed.
Yes.
A huge influence on me.
Yeah.
Craig's a stone lifter of many decades, a massively impressive athlete, top
Yeah.
notch. And I managed to get invited to and take part in some Highlander style competitions.
Yeah.
So a bit of throwing, bit of lifting.
Yeah.
I ended up going to places where I knew that Donald Dinnie had competed at when he was in Australia.
Okay.
So for some reason, so I live in Linlithgow, just, I don't know, between Edinburgh and Glasgow.
Okay.
And I walked past Linlithgow Castle, where Mary Queen of Scots was born hundreds of years ago.
Right.
I ignore all the history that's around me because it's everywhere. You walk past 1,000-year-old castles and you don't even look up. I went to Australia, and for some reason, when you go to outside of Melbourne, into country Victoria, you go to these gold towns and you see modern stuff right next to buildings that are a few hundred years old and look perfect. They're preserved, no development since the gold rush ended. And I began to do some Googles and research in the National Library of Australia. And you go, oh, actually, I'm actually in the same place that Dinnie was. He competed here, and it's not seen a lot of development.
Right.
That just somehow felt unique, different somehow.
Yeah.
So I began, as I do, online libraries, that kind of nerdy stuff. And I put together, I don't know, a couple of dozen pages about Dinnie in Australia to formulate my thoughts and put it online.
Yeah.
And then I found other stuff on other Highland Games athletes from Australia. And I shared it with Craig Reid and Luke Reynolds, both of whom went, that's actually pretty good. And I was encouraged by that. So I just did more and more research about Dinnie in particular.
Yes.
Because I was in regular correspondence with Peter. And from there, that's where it all came.
Okay.
So I put it into book form, but it was never an intention to publish a book and make money, because there's no money in small print runs of niche books.
Yeah.
And it was probably a fool's errand. It cost me a fortune, but I wanted to have the book, and I don't know, it became an ambition. But there was stuff that didn't make it to the book, or stuff I found out afterwards.
Yeah.
And then through horrific timing, Peter passed away.
Yes.
And created the Old Man of the Stones website, dedicated to his research, his articles.
Yeah.
And then posted all that online, and then just began to feed anything additional that I had found.
Right, okay.
So it's the website for Peter and his work. But again, if you put the Stones at the centre of it, or Dinnie at the centre of it, you can justify to yourself adding more and more material, because that's the core of what it's about.
Yeah.
It's not my website, it's nothing to do with me. It's just a vehicle through which I can put out information that I think hits the standard of accuracy that Peter would have approved of.
Yes.
I wouldn't want anything that I had done not matching his standard.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to share it, and there's lots of interesting wee nuggets you find along the way.
Yeah. But it's a benchmark, James, to set yourself. You know, I mean, if you kind of go with the standards that Peter set and you try and stick to those, you know, I think you're going to end up with quality information going out there because it's properly researched. You know, and that's important. I mean, important to me as well. I mean, when I'm putting stuff on my Dinnie website, I want to be able to, anything that I put on it, you know, obviously all my stuff's more modern now, because I took a lot of stuff that Gordon had done and I transferred it across, because sadly Gordon passed away and his website was dormant. So I thought I'll use his as a starting point, and then anything that comes onto that, I'll make sure that I can verify it, I can show evidence of it. Obviously we have videos and stuff now, you know, and that's so. But anything that I put on, I want to be able to verify it, and that's what I love about this. That it's, you know, obviously there's no video footage of the stuff you're talking about, but you're going back through the proper channels and taking the time to actually research it, you know.
Yeah, so people can still, or should, draw their own conclusions.
Yes.
But it should be, in my opinion, based on the knowable information. And the crazy thing is, if you're playing the long game here, as people have more and more digitized books online, more information becomes available. So rather than through the passage of time, less is available, we're actually going to find that more and more of those Deeside, Aberdeen-based books will become online, and I could never find them or buy them, they're too dear. But we'll be able to research them. And I think the image we have of stone lifting and Dinnie will evolve over time. So what we currently think is different from those 40 years ago. Yeah. Because roughly the first generation of Dinnie lifters is probably the 70s. those guys
Yes,
had the
yes,
photos.
yes.
There was a whole group of them.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm going to say the last 10, 15 years, there seems to be an increase, a resurgence of interest in stone lifting.
Yes.
And probably once we get all old and we'll be sitting there, barely able to get into our kilts, there'll be guys with cartilage in their knees, 20 years old, doing feats that we can't even imagine.
Yes.
So we're just, to me, there's a line of stone lifters. I think I've posted this online. So rather than think of us as being a brotherhood of stones, a collective right now, I tend to think of us as being a line, a timeline.
Okay.
And most of the good stone lifters have yet to be born.
Quite possibly,
we're the subset that's currently lifting. Unfortunately, some of our guys have come before us and passed on. But the best ones are still to come. And we're just the custodians of the stones. We'll gather the information. And hopefully we'll still be, compos mentis while those guys take over from us and do something spectacular. It's really, it feels like a golden era for stone lifters.
Well, I think it does. We need to think of something, even a modern stone like the Atlas stone. If you think back, not even that far, that a 200 kilogram stone lift was something. And now we have Tom Stoltman on the edge of lifting a 300 kilogram stone. That's half as much again in a space of a few swing. And in historical terms, 20 years is nothing. 20 years ago, a 200 kilogram stone was unheard of. So if you think now where things are going, just even in the modern stone lifting, but are you saying in the old time stone lifting as well? It's
There's a greater pool of people who are interested, but if you look back to say the 80s, even getting an Atlas stone, who had them? When I lived in Australia, I shipped mine. I had a set of stones, and I shipped them from Scotland to Australia and then back with me.
T's there, yes, it's P-E-D, no T's in there, no.
No,
I'm just sorry.
Because they were so hard to get. Obviously now there are molds and people who are good at stone lifting or who have the potential to have access to all the equipment and stones. They're definitely going to do a lot more than we did.
Oh yeah. There's Brett is going to get. He's obviously in an area where you can get the natural stones, but I think he just had a 90 kilogram Atlas stone delivered tonight. So he'll be the next thing you see. He'll be putting that over his head. So
actually, no, that's a good point. So there are a number of people involved in stone lifting, a very small subset who tend to be talked about. All of the people I've ever met in stone lifting have been unbelievably generous, and you can't say anyone is more generous than that man there you just mentioned, Brett. How many times has he helped people out on the day? Gifting stones and natural logs. It's a very, very fortunate that people like him kicking around.
Yes, I agree. 100%. Because it's guys like him that make this thing spread. Because if he does a nice gesture for something like me, for example, he gave me some stones from royalties, and obviously they were in agreement with the landowner. They weren't stolen off land or anything. So, but they're back at my house now. I've given them names. I use them, to teach other guys and all the techniques for stone lifting, and they're now going off. They can do it, and they're going off and spreading it out. So even over here, just as a result of what Brett's done, it's spreading. And it's like you say, it's guys like Brett, with their generosity, not only just to provide equipment and stones, but to pass on their knowledge. He's there every single dinny lift. And I'm
he's
sure
he's very humble. How many guys wouldn't have got their lift in if he hadn't helped them? And I include myself in that position.
Hold it this way, stand this way, or just move yourself around a wee bit, get that right foot forward a bit. Those wee small pearls of information, can make all the difference on a day. And I've seen Brett doing it, and I've seen guys struggle, and then all of a sudden go, oh, there you go, that's it. Who might otherwise have, not saying they would have failed, but there's a fair chance, they weren't really getting it, and then all of a sudden guys like Brett come along and go, just do that. What I love about Brett was whenever he shows somebody, he said, just go, that's it. Okay, do it like that. It just makes it so easy,
He's like a Marvel character. He's got this different gravity around him, and just he makes it look so light.
I think he's got airbags under him. He's got a wee button he presses. or like a magnet, you know, like an opposite magnet just pushes them up. It has to happen. It has, yeah. Yes. No, that's, I mean, you could talk all day about the history of these things, but what I'm enjoying and what I'm looking forward to, and that's what I want to talk about next is what is next. I mean, how far? I mean, did you want to talk about what you're doing with Peter Martin's information, the stuff that was unpublished? Because I mean, you're mainly about Donald Denny himself. So obviously, what you're doing now is you're turning your eye towards the stones themselves.
Yeah, I'm happy to share anything that I know. So once Peter passed away, which was very upsetting, I went through a process where I had emails, exchanges with him, I don't know, over a 10-year period or something. So I gathered it all together, and I don't know if it was a grief process or something, but I went through all the emails, everything I'd stored, and then I began to put together everything I knew or had heard of about all of the stones, including all his articles and emails. And I went through it, kind of filtered it in some way, because obviously there was multiple versions of things, and as his knowledge increased and new facts became available, some articles were quite updated. So I went through all of them, did that, followed up a whole bunch of leads, things he was investigating but hadn't completed.
Right, cool.
Interviewed people, chatted to them, and then I went through it all and organised the whole document in council areas. So if you're from overseas, Scotland's split up into council areas, local government areas. So you can look at Aberdeenshire and look at all the stones and Dumfries and Galloway and so forth. And I put that all together just for myself. And then I shared what's basically Peter's work with his family. And said, look, I don't know what your ambitions are for Peter's work, or if you have any. It's not my place to say. However, I've gone through and gathered as much as I could find of his work, and this is it. So I shared it with them, and I'm not sure what may or may not happen. He had a separate book in flight, or his own book in flight, which was a stone listing one, but the centre point was culture, Gaelic culture.
Right, okay.
So obviously a lot of it was Gaelic, it was different language. I found it quite difficult to understand and didn't feel that I could go through that book with any level of confidence. Because I am a facts and figures guy. The dates, the weights, who said what, where, when. So I could do that, but I wasn't able to even attempt to do anything with his other work. Between the I don't know what the working title was for that one again. Between the twixt the.
Yes, goodness, yeah, you're right. I flipped now. You put me on the spot, but I do know what you mean. Yes, because he did mention that to me as well. Sorry, it'll come to me.
He had a partial draft of that book, and I and a few others had been fortunate enough to proofread it and send back our remarks. So I'd been briefly involved from proofreading. So there is something that I've got, but I would obviously catch up with the family and maybe just see if they have any ambitions to publish it or not, or if they'd like me or allow me to share it through the website. So everything to do with the Old Man of the Stones website is with the permission of his family. It really is. Whatever they want or don't want would be what I would do.
Yes, okay. Well, I suppose that's what's one thing. I mean, that's kind of like at the centre of everything that we do that I've come across, James, is the word respect. You know, and there's a lot of it about, you know, with stone lifters, that we respect the stones, we respect each other, respecting Peter's family and his family's wishes, you know, and when you bring that into it, it just makes all of this so attractive to me, you know. So it does, because it's a thing I've always, even in my music, is respecting other musicians and stuff, you know. So it's a very cool concept for me.
A couple of other interesting things have happened. So some stuff comes in from left field. Totally unexpected. So obviously the McGregor stone was a recent find. I had no idea that stone was there. A friend got in touch through Instagram, and I drove out, and sure enough, this very liftable stone that was obviously some sort of traditional stone was available. And that was just completely random.
Wow.
There's another couple that I finished the research for from Peter's notes.
Yep.
But the place I went to, and I did the lift, I sneaked in, lifted it. The building was unoccupied, so I haven't been able to contact the owner.
Yep.
So there's a few things that are available
Yes.
that I know of, but I don't have permission to share.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of that.
Good.
But if we broaden our sights from beyond Scotland, Ryan Stewart and Nick Whalen,
Yes.
these guys are some of the fantastic stone lifters, very
Absolutely
well travelled.
Yeah, absolutely amazing.
And I can research for hours and not find anything. And I swear these guys could bump a keyboard with their elbow and they discover 10 stones. I don't know. They put a lot of work in. I'm only joking, but it's amazing. So Nick and Ryan have lifted in Iceland. There's a whole raft of stones, heavy stones, in Sweden.
Yeah.
Nick went to the Faroe Islands as well. So when you take a step back, obviously I'm more centred around Scotland and Peter and that relationship and friendship.
Yeah.
But if you look at the Old Man of the Stones website and look at the stones overall,
yes,
there's a pattern emerging. It wasn't just some crazy Scottish people
no,
who did this thing alone.
Yeah, I mean, guys are
fashion.
Where they come from, you've got that sort of manhood thing, and that's, before you had illegal plates. I mean, of course, that's the heavy stuff was stones at a point in time,
Yeah, so it's amazing to see what they've done. And if you look at the world map, you can just see over time. There's obviously loads in Scotland because we're doing a lot of work there, but Europe as well, and then further afield. And obviously there's Japan and those Asian countries, and they have a similar but different approach. But stone is at the centre of it.
Oh yeah. Well, I think if you had a world map and we like wherever you start to see lights going on all over the place. And I think that the more lights are coming on at a greater rate. I mean, even in Ireland here, I've talked about this, about Peter's initial research. And I mean, it was 2015 when Peter passed, but it's sort of early 2015 he was talking to me. He said, I've a lot of stuff that I want to finish off here, but I hoped in 2016, that I can start to follow up some of the leads that I have in Ireland. So obviously you and I spoke about it. Peter passed some of them on to me. I mean, I think I got about eight or nine leads from him. I have managed to follow up about 4 to conclusion. I have. There's still a few that I need to do because last year particularly I really wanted to do it on the motorcycle, but then COVID hit. But during COVID, what I have managed to do, and I think I have talked to you about this, is on the Aran Islands. There's 3 Aran Islands. The middle one's called Innismeen. I did get some stuff from yourself and some stuff from Peter on that. I put some feelers out locally, and I managed to get. There's a girl from here who works in Galway. The Aran Islands are just off the coast of Galway, which is on the west coast of Ireland, about halfway down. And she has a friend that she works with whose parents live on Innismeen, the middle one of the Aran Islands. So she said she would speak to her friend, who would speak to her dad, who would ask locally. And it was actually her dad came back and says, yeah, we have tons of stones here still. They're still used. There's tons of history with them. So I managed to get a telephone number of a gentleman who would be sort of probably the most knowledgeable I've spoken to him.
Did your wife know you're picking up telephone numbers of women and the guys of stone lifting?
Shh! Don't tell her. I'm going to mute this now. No, man, it's so exciting. I mean, to actually get a live lead, because we came very close. It was the stone that was in Banagher that we talked about. The one that was made out of marble, I reckon about 80 kilogram size of a beach bladder that they used to throw over their shoulder. I came so close. I came to the farm, but the grandfather was quite ill, and I spoke to the grandson. And I said, my grandfather's quite ill at the moment. He probably wouldn't be up for a chat about it, but if he's feeling better, if I get a chance, I'll talk to him. And I'll come back. He was Brian Irwin, and I went up to see that. And I haven't heard from him since, but I've recently spoken to a chap who's actually a policeman up in that area, and a stone lifter. So I passed him all the research and all the stuff that I'd done to that point. So he's going to speak locally because he knows obviously a lot of the locals, and that's where his area is, right in the thick of all that. So what's the space in that one? And then there's a couple in the south of Ireland, and in where are we? In Monaghan. There's one in Monaghan, and there's a few still that I've got that are kind of like a hell of a distance away. So when things open up again, I'm just going to jump my motorcycle and go down and see. I can't wait. Honestly, I can't wait. So I
Yeah,
get your
well, lockdown's been a bit of a pain.
things, you know.
Lockdown's been a bit of a pain because there's been a
Yeah,
few things sent to me. I'd love to go and just drive to that location, see if
yeah,
the stones are there that people think they might be there.
yeah.
So I think for Scotland, I'm not sure if we can travel anywhere yet, or I
It's
don't know.
hard.
The rules changed
It
today.
is starting to change a wee bit. You know, like I just got some news today. Obviously, we've been talking about the gathering, and you know that flame is far from out at the moment. You know, I mean, we have a few things that we just need to kind of just wait a wee bit longer, and then we'll be able to make announcements, and we'll talk about that at the next meeting. I think you got the email about that. You know, once we have that chat, you know, we can look at the Scottish one, but the Irish one, we just got news yesterday. We're going to hold one in Glenarm Castle, about the 18th of July. Glenarm have just announced that there's an event that got cancelled last year in May. It's to do with tulips. So it's not my event, obviously. But the tulip event is on in May. So obviously if that's on, you know, there's restricted ticket numbers, but, you know, all of a sudden, you know, there's an event on, albeit with restricted numbers. Come June, that's going to be better again. July, who knows? You know, so,
So
yeah.
that's an in-person event in Ireland.
It is, yes. I have 12 athletes,
Nice.
all top guys. We have 5 events all chosen. Everybody's training for it as we speak. We even have the T-shirts printed. We've got a green version of this. You know, this Andy Kearney's T-shirt. You know, we've got a green version of this one done. You know, so I mean, it's you know, having that over here, and then if we can start, you know, getting some of these, find some of these historic stones, we could bring them along, like we do with the Inver stone at the gathering. You know, we have the McGlashan stones this year for the gathering, if it happens. So we'll have the Inver and the McGlashan stones in the one place, I think, for the first time. You know, so
It's an amazing thing to happen to get some of these stones together. It's
yeah, be nice.
a really special event.
Yeah, that is good. It is. You know, and it's great to have you on the team as well, because, you know, I mean, the people that I kind of envisaged working with are people who are as passionate about stones as I am. You know, about the Denny's and all the natural stones. So you got Martin, Brett, yourself, me. You know, there's Mark Haydock's coming up to work with us. You know, and we've got Gogs and goodness gracious, there's so many people coming on board now, you know, to help make this thing work and grow. So it's exciting times. It's just a pity COVID came in the middle of all this. It's really, it's put the brakes on a bit, but at the same time, and you probably noticed yourself last year, I mean, because you were in the thick of it all anyway with what you were doing. You know, how many people took part in the virtual gathering?
Yeah, that was, well, not surprisingly popular, but pleasantly surprised how popular it was.
I was.
Huge number of entries,
yeah,
which was good.
Yeah, it gave us a lot of work to do to go and judge all of this to try and find out to score it. But you know what a great problem to have. You know, and it was lovely seeing even sort of fathers and their young children lifting maybe a 30-kilogram stone. I mean, there's Brett with Ruben doing stuff. You know, there's guys in Australia with their kids doing stuff. You know, so that's to me that's stuff that's being embedded for the next generation. You know, so I mean, having that, or even coming from what we're doing at the gathering and having that spread around the world is, you know, mission accomplished almost. You know.
How about I throw a couple of tricky questions at you, things I don't know the answer for, maybe people watching do or don't. So obviously that's a virtual event, which is fantastic. All over the world, people lifting different stones.
Yes.
If the stones are getting more popular, how do we balance this golden period where everyone's got access to them, which is wonderful, but a bit of wear and tear on them?
Yes.
I know that people wrestled with that. I've got no idea what to do about that.
Yeah.
I just wondered if, in your travels, you heard any ideas?
I have my own opinion on it, for what it's worth. And I mean, one of the things that kind of inspired me to get involved with the Denny Stones was, I mean, they're obviously a national treasure, and we have to preserve them. But at the same time, guys have to be allowed to lift them. You know, and they are granite. I mean, all of these stones are granite, and I mean they've mainly been lifted on light gravel or grass. You know, but I'm not a fan of locking them up so people can look at them, because that's not what they were there for. They were there to be lifted, and things do break. Stuff happens. I mean, even with the most respect in the world for these stones, at some point the ice is going to get into a chip. The chip's going to become a hole. The hole's going to become a fissure. The thing's going to snap. You know, that's just that happens. I think for us, preserving the history and getting the history on paper and allowing people to become part of the history is the most that we can do. I mean, we've no control, James, over if a stone's going to break or not break, but I mean, one of the things that we can do is make these stories, accessible to people. That's my own opinion on it. We have to let people lift them. Otherwise, it's kind of reading about a stone for a stone lifter is one thing, and it's great. I love reading your stuff about Denny, but actually getting out there and doing it, there's just nothing like it. And I'm speaking as a guy. I mean, I'm not by any means any of a great stone lifter, but I'm a passionate stone lifter. And it doesn't matter if I can lift a 50 kilogram stone or a 300 kilogram stone. I'm still a stone lifter, and I still have that passion. And to be able to get at the stones, that's my take on it. Is that we should encourage it.
There is something. Oh, sorry, interrupt you there, mate.
Sorry, no, go ahead. I think that the last thing I'll say on it is encourage lifting, but encourage education.
It's interesting because I don't have I'm not sure what my opinion is yet on it.
Yeah.
Because I've moaned at a few people for dropping the stones and looked at my own videos and thought, oh, I did the exact same thing. Who am I to talk?
You know what?
We've all got a few horrific videos out there. So I'm not speaking from a position of authority. But yeah, I just...
Listen, I mean, if you're lifting a heavy stone, there's always a chance you're going to drop it. For example, if you're putting a stone on your shoulder, it's imbalanced. Something could happen. It becomes a split-second choice between self-preservation, and getting out of the way, So, and I mean, everybody's done it. I think it's more kind of try not to do it on purpose. As best as you can, try and guide the stone back to the ground. If that's not possible, if you're going to hurt yourself, stand away.
I've seen a few guys take mats, which I think is a great effort on their part. It shows they're going there with good intentions to, worst case scenario, they're going to try and put it down on the mat, which is great.
Yes.
Yeah, just curious. I'll turn the tables on you a little bit.
Well, I know you're okay. I mean, a good example of that is we have the Belogie Stone event. We have what we're trying to do with the Belogie Stone event is show the 5 different sort of phases of lifting an actual stone. We've made Brett was able to sort. It was amazing what he got. He's got a stone that's almost exactly the same weight as the Inver stone. So we have that. You lift it off the ground. You're breaking the ground, which is getting the wind under the stone. You've got the lapping part of it. We've got the stand up to the chest or waist. We've got the shoulder. We've got the press. So in the rules for this year, I mean, I've given it for a bit of thought. In terms of points allocation and the levels of difficulty, versus the number of points that you're going to achieve. But one of the things that I did say is if you press it over your head, you can drop it. You don't have to come down and on your shoulder. That's the one thing that I would say to guys, because you've got 123 kilos stop above your head. And if anything goes wrong when you're bringing that down, you could be dead. And it's not a historic stone.
Why am I laughing at that? But that's true.
So I've built that into the rules for and I mean, Brett and I have talked about it, and Brett agrees, that one thing you can just let that one, because we're on grass, and it is granite, but if guys were constantly doing that with the historic stones, I think that would be disappointing. So
as we speak here, I guess there's a distinction between competition lifting, and you definitely have to preserve the lifter, and then that recreational one with traditional stones. Yeah, I don't have an answer. I just thought I'd throw it in there.
I've been government. I can't shut it. You know what I mean? But no, I mean it is. I mean, and the thing about it is, my opinion is not the right opinion. It's just mine. You know what I mean? Because you and I could sit and talk about this, and we could agree on certain things, but not on others. You bring a third into the conversation, all of a sudden you've got 3 completely different opinions. But nobody's necessarily right. I think if we all just maintain that level of respect for the stones, and you give your opinion with that in mind, we're not going to differ too much.
It is an interesting situation we're in, where the things that we like lifting belong to all sorts of different owners. Some are in fields, some in gardens, some in councils. I think we've got a lot of free access, unlimited access just now, which is fantastic. I hope it continues. I wonder if it will. I don't know.
A good example of the limited access is, I can't remember the full name of the stones, but they've got blue in the title, and they've got like metal bands on them.
Blue Stones of Old Daly, or Dali.
That's the ones, Blue Stones Old Dali, yeah. You know, so the council are very reluctant to take those shackles off those because, you know, obviously councils being councils, risk assessments, you know, liability, all that. Man, I've been a civil servant for 40 years, so I know how to think. So, you know, and it's, you know, it's kind of, that is something, you know, particularly in this modern era of health and safety. You know, we have owners, we have people who may sort of challenge and stuff like that. So I think it's having that, you know, it's striking that balance, you know, but between, I mean, I think we've done a great job with the Dinnies, you know, with the minimum weight thing, just to show that a guy isn't coming up, he's going to wreck himself, he's not used to lifting weights. You know, we have the department, so we're recording everything, preserving, you know.
So 1 second, sorry. Abby's messaged me individually. Can you just message her back on Snapchat? Find out. Yeah. All right, okay. Sorry. Life gets in the way. I think my daughter wants picked up. My wife's going to go do that. It's fine.
I'm gonna pour another beer.
I didn't know it was catered.
It's Friday night. This is my protein shake for the night.
You've mentioned crime and thieving about 3 times and alcohol 4 times. I think I'm getting your measure now.
I'm Irish, mate. What can I say? Yeah. We all have Celtic blood. Remember that? Yeah, I suppose. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, obviously, the more stones that are accessible, and the less restrictions there are, the better, I think. You know, but at the same time, the more we, I mean, I think it's a responsibility to educate young stone lifters coming through to say, look, this is the history of the stone. This was the original challenge. You know, stuff like that. You know, because not every stone needs pressed above your head. You know, not every stone needs to be on your shoulder. There's certain histories that I like to see. Personally, I like to see the original challenge being preserved.
That's a good point, actually, because I know I'm the same. Once I've been able to stand up with a stone, I would love to try and shoulder it.
Yeah.
But that isn't really always the challenge. It's just a challenge I've set myself.
Yes,
it's a fair point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but at the end of the day, I mean, stone lifters are athletes too, and athletes are competitive. You know, so I mean, that's what I mean. For example, a great example is the Dinnie stones. You know, if you take the original challenge as Dinnie left it down, it was lift the stones or carry them across the bridge. You know, and I always argue that there's a father to son thing there because he talks about his father. And there's a fourth one that Dinnie talks about his father could lift the big stone up onto the parapet of the bridge. It was actually Jimmy Grahame reminded me of that one because I knew about it, but I'd forgotten, you know. So we're obviously lifting the big Dinnie onto the parapet of Potthart Bridge would have a lot of people running for the hills. You know, but I mean, from that point, you know, to now, you know, things like walking with the stones as far as you can. You know, there was lifting the stones for reps. But that's just guys just wanting to take it to the next level. I understand that. You know, so that's going to happen regardless of what any of us do or say. But I think if people are aware of what the original challenge was, then I think that's important. So they know, like, this was what guys did 200 years ago. So if you want to come out and replicate that, do that. Mission accomplished. But then if you're feeling frisky and you want to, you know, carry it a bit further, hold it a bit longer, you know, I mean, the whole sort of lift and hold thing now is really taken off, and it's I mean, Mark Haydock, 46.3 seconds, good grief, with a minute on the horizon, you know, that's incredible. You know, it's not the original challenge, but history starts somewhere, you know. So I mean, in 50, 100 years, I mean, my dad's stones are 50-year-old now. You know, that's amazing. Like, you know, all of a sudden, you know, you have stones that were actually created. It was actually February 1972, so they're 49 and a bit years old, you know. But flipping heck, all of a sudden, you know. So I think, I mean, all of these things that are happening now and taking these challenges to the next level or to a different level, you know, that's all going to become part of the history, you know, an evolving history as we go on, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, it's a very good point. Athletes get to express their strength in different ways now.
Yeah.
We're far more creative, or time to be creative, than we maybe had in the past.
Yes. I mean,
just lifting on this.
I think that's one of the things that I like about what you're doing and Martin's doing, you know, and David Webster has done over the years is preserving the original story, you know. And obviously then as time goes on, we're all adding to it. You know, I think adding to it on social media is probably mean if I put out, you know, say I lift the Inverstone, you know, and put it on my newsfeed, you know, and I say, look, this is the original story of the Inverstone. It was a wall at waist height. You know, Donald Denny was named after blah, blah, blah. And that's on a Facebook post. 2 days later, that's about 5 stories down my newsfeed. A month's time, you will have to spend an hour to try and find it. You know, but then once you get the written word, you know, on the book with what you guys are doing, that's it, it's there. You know, that's the bit that really, that I'm very grateful for guys like yourself and Martin and stuff, you know, that are doing this.
Yeah, I guess people can consume the information in different ways. So I know from the website, I mean, I like writing the articles, that kind of thing. That appeals to me.
Yes.
But I know comparing that to the hits on the website, that the articles are seldom read, but the posts and the little smaller snippets that you just described there probably have the greater range. Those ones are going to be the ones to influence people the most.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the way we're going to have to get out that message, that education of this is the history, this is what you're taking part in.
Yes.
And this is how you should treat the stones so that the next generation can have them as well.
Yeah. I mean, we've all had things that have inspired us, and I think that, I mean, social media is definitely playing us part in it, because you flick down your social media and all of a sudden you see a guy with 2 big giant boulders, you know, lifting them and go, oh, you know, you go, flip, that's class, I want to try that. So that's the here and now. That's maybe the thing that lights the spark, you know, which inspires somebody then to maybe go to the next stage and write, where's the books in this? Who's been writing books? You know, and maybe contact you. Do you know anybody who's writing any books and you wish you would say, no, I don't know any good ones? I'm only joking. But you know what I mean? It's lighting that spark for guys, you know, and that could come from a Facebook video, a Facebook post, but then that would inspire the deeper research, you know. So
social media is going to be a part of it, and this live streaming and the virtual Donald Denny games, I think, are going to be ongoing.
Yes.
People can take part in it. It'll be different from lifting the same stone, touching the same stone that somebody else has lifted a decade or 100 years before. Will always remain uniquely special. Well, not everybody can afford to travel the world and risk it all to try and lift a stone.
Yeah. I mean, we had a meeting last week, and I think the first thing that we agreed, and it was a very, very easy decision to reach, was, you know, obviously we want to continue the Donald Denny games. We want to continue doing Denny stone lifts at Donald Denny Day. But, I mean, at the moment, that's up in the air whether, you know, to what degree we can do that. But one of the things that we can do, and we should do going forward, is run a virtual games. It's very easy to do. I mean, you put a post out there, you have a hashtag, people all over the world can just lift a stone in their back garden, submit the video, and then you have that connection. Because even last year, I mean, there was people that met each other through that and are now training together. You know, so it's all that side of the knock-on effect of it as well. Not only just that we all get to enjoy people watching stones and young fellas lifting stones and ladies lifting stones and older guys. I mean, Scott last year, you know, coming third, but his was amazing. He started playing the pipes. Then he lifted a stone on the umbrella, you know, and then he had a wee whiskey, and then he played the pipes. So you had your intro, you had your main event, you know, you had your wee interval drink, and then you had your encore. It was a full show with one stone lift, you know. That really appealed to me. But so yes, I think, I mean, for anybody listening who's following the Donald Denny games or where we're going with it, I do think in parallel, regardless of what we do with the Donald Denny games, the physical games, I think we'll always open that opportunity at least once a year for folk to come in, you know, lift a stone and here's what I did, you know. I know there's Jamie Duncan, last year's winner. Speak of the devil. Yeah. Hi Jamie. Hi Brett. Well, all these things are scrolling up here. My eyesight's really bad. I find it hard to follow the comments, but you young fellas can probably read it.
I can't really see it. I tried to do this on the computer, but it wouldn't let me join. I'm on the phone.
Ah, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. So it's always small writing. It is. So, do you have a plan to actually release the work that you're doing now, Peter Martin's work? Are you going to put it into a book? Or, I mean, is it something you're just going to gather together and see what happens?
It's gathered together already. I always get in touch with his family on the anniversary of his passing, and I'll do that again. And we just catch up with them in September.
Oh, it's just
End
the
of
end of
September.
September. It was the end of September, start of October. Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
And we'll see what their wishes might be, or if they have any opinion on it.
Okay.
In the beginning, I thought I'll just gather it all and I'll put it on the website. But then I realised it wasn't mine to share in some way. It was,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it just felt wrong to do it without permission. So
Yeah.
there's lots of information there that's been gathered and sorted. It's
Yes.
the amalgamation of all the work from Peter that I'm aware of.
Yes.
And then I finished off all these references and research leads that I could.
Yes.
I've also added in the stuff that came in, like
Yeah.
the McGregor stone, which came from nowhere, effectively.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's definitely something I'd like people to see,
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah.
I'll obviously leave it to his family to decide.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely an appetite in the market for it. I mean, even for guys who know about the Inverstone, they know about the Denny's, they maybe know about the Dalwhinnie or something like that. But then this is like, here's where you can go with this. There's such a wealth of these things, all having their own individual stories, individual challenges. Because I've obviously been in talking about the Old Man of the Stones website loads. And I just love reading the stories on it.
To be fair, I think that the GPS map is by far the most popular bit of that website.
Yes, I can imagine why. No, I can, yeah.
Get a smartphone, hit the button, and you're there.
Yeah, I did that with the Donald Denny website. I mean, on the homepage, there's just a wee sort of Google Maps link. So just click this, and that'll put in your phone. That'll take you right to Petark, and you don't have to worry about anything, or just follow your GPS. Yeah, GPS is amazing. Having said that, I mean, I do remember Peter telling me about a stone. I think it was when he was with you that you guys had to park up and walk for 5 miles.
I can't remember.
Was
it
it
5 miles?
It was as long as 5 miles. I don't know, but maybe it was a hell of a downer anyway. So it was.
There were some crazy trips, I have to admit.
Yeah.
And I know that myself, like I would take handwritten notes and a paper map. Okay. It'd be like, set your odometer to 0 now, travel 8 miles in this direction. There'll be a blue sign on your left, turn right, and that kind of thing. And I know that, and I don't think Andy will mind me telling this, I think he and some of his guys several years ago went to find Fiona Stone. And even they guys who were locals effectively couldn't find it. It was as bad as that.
Really?
They'd
Wow.
drive 10 miles down one way and go, I'm going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Head back.
Yeah.
So it would take you hours just to find the stone, let alone warm up and lift it.
There you go. Yeah, I know exactly. But like you said at the very start of our chat, mate, it's the journey to the stone as well. That's half the fun in it.
Yeah, I mean, I like that part of it.
Yeah.
I know in the beginning, I used to think about the weather. Because you're looking for a dry lift to maximise your chances of success.
Yeah.
But over the years, I've changed to just go whenever I'm free to go.
Well, Scotland. Good luck getting a dry day in Scotland.
And just lift that stone on that day. And if it's wet and it's harder, then that's fine. Or some days are great, some are horrific.
Yeah.
So although the implement's the same, the stone is the same, the challenge can differ. So I go back to the same stones again and again under different conditions.
Yeah.
And I think that's still worthwhile. There'll be stones now that, maybe now I can shoulder a given stone, but maybe a year or two from now it'll just be chesting. It'll be enough.
Yeah. Listen, we're not getting any younger. There's no doubt about that one. The stuff he was lifting. And I mean, he's still strong. He still lifts. But definitely me and him and I think my best lifts are behind me now. I mean, I'll be 60 in a couple of years. So I mean, it's not that I'm over the hill running, but I just don't feel the need to lift as heavy as I did. But I mean, obviously after I lifted the Denny's, I just went, right, what's next?
I think the best we can hope for is to chauffeur the better younger lifters around and pretend 100%. We're still relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
These guys 20 years younger than us who are better. We'll be their chauffeur. We can hold the camera.
You know what? If they hit their teeth on a stone, we can lend them our false teeth. Eat their dinner and stuff like that. We can. No, my goodness, I mean, it is exciting to see where, like you say, I mean, everything's evolving, and people are getting stronger, and there are better lifters coming along. So I'm looking forward to see how all that pans out. With all these, I mean, I've read about them, I've seen them, but I've only had experience of 2 outside the Denny's. Well, I suppose, I mean, Brett stones are obviously getting out there now, so obviously I have a lot of experience with Brett Nichols stones. But I mean, it's the Saddle and Mare and the Inverstone is the only two that I've had any real experience with. No, it is, and that was thanks to Charlie Blair Often took me on a wee sort of tour, you know. And but the journey to these things was lovely. I really enjoyed that, you know.
So what kind of training did you do for those sort of egg-shaped stones then?
I didn't do any. I was just over there. I was over to see Charlie. And we said, "Come on, we'll go for a drive." And next thing we arrived at June's house. Oh, bye bye, love. My wife's away to work. She said, bye bye. We just arrived at June's house out of the blue, and he said, "There's the Inverstone." I said, "You're joking," you know, because I thought that looks familiar, that wee house. And then there it was, sitting there, the Inverstone. It was like, oh, you know, it was an amazing feeling. So I had to go. I mean, I couldn't stand up or anything, but I managed to get it off the ground. I got it close to my knees. I was happy enough, you know, get a bit of wind under it. And I said, right, definitely. We're going to go now. We're down to Denny's, got a few photographs there, because I was talking to Charlie about, you know, sort of thumb grips and stuff like that at the time. And then we ended up at the Saddle and Mare as well. And that was a lovely journey, because at the time all the trees were there. You know,
that caused quite a stir when they all went away.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't believe it was the same thing when I seen the photographs. You know, but I remember he pulled over just randomly at the side of the road. I thought, oh, he must be stopping for a pee. You know, I said, "Are we getting out for a pee here?" And he went, "No, not looking through the trees." And there it was.
Scotsmen just pee at the side of the road, you know. We're not all like that.
Irishmen.
We're not animals like you Irish.
We're obviously more practical than you, yeah. Or maybe just our bladders aren't as strong. Well, James, listen, I really enjoyed talking to you about it, and I really hope that we're able to see the result of all your work in a book. That would be my, you know, if I had a wish, you know, for the next year or so, it would be to see that coming out.
At best, I'm just editing Peter's work. It's all his stuff, really. Yeah,
no, I understand. I know, and I think people will appreciate that. I mean, anybody who knows you will know about Peter. Anybody who knows Martin will know about Peter. I mean, I obviously speak about Peter as much as possible, because, you know, the amount of stuff that he uncovered and the amount of work that he did was amazing. You know, but it's lovely that it's still there and it's growing. You know, because that's what he would have wanted to see. You know, I mean, if Peter was here now and he could speak to you, he would say, "Crack on, get it out there," because that was what he wanted to do. You know, so and I would imagine his family would be to see him. You know, they will.
Yeah, it's good information. It's out there, and he shared it, which was really generous.
Yes, yes, he did. Yeah, and I think that's what we do. I mean, we're generous guys, aren't we? You know.
Is that what you're saying? When we're not peeing at the roadside, we're arguing over 2p pieces. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely, 100%. Listen, James, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, pal, as always.
Thank you very much.
Fingers crossed we get the Donald Denny games on. I mean, I'm 99.9% sure we're going to be able to do something this year. You know, and we'll run the virtual games. Then next year we'll be back at Patark, all guns blazing. You know.
That's fantastic news.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Hopefully everybody else enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed talking to you. And I'll see you soon, pal.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Yeah, love the family. Cheers, pal.
Bye-bye. Bye.